She smiled at my baby shower like a saint, while my phone burned in my palm. My name is Greer Ashford. I am 31, teaching art to middle schoolers and 32 weeks pregnant with my first child. The shower is in my sister-in-law's backyard, a tidy rectangle of grass lined with rose bushes, the kind that hold their petals like secrets. Pink paper lanterns sway above the gift table. Candles flicker in mason jars. My husband, Owen, stacks extra folding chairs by the fence, trying to look less nervous than he feels. His mother, Claire, arrives with a cake so perfect it looks printed. White frosting, pale peonies made of sugar, silver pearls. She lifts the lid, and the yard inhales together. The cake reads, "Welcome baby Hartley, not Ashford," a surname she prefers to mine. She brushes imaginary crumbs from her wrist, then kisses my cheek. Her perfume smells like cold lilies and the kind of department store where you hold your breath at the counter. "Isn't this lovely?" she says, smile bright. We wanted to keep it tasteful. We. She and the women who orbit her. Church friends. Owen's aunt. The cousin who posts inspirational quotes over beaches. They arranged most things, insisted the registry looked excessive, substituted the onesies with crocheted booties that won't survive a wash. When my mother's gift of handmade quilts arrived, Claire suggested laundering them at her house, where she uses proper detergent. The words lodged in me like burrs. I stand beside the gift table and take breaths, watching people drift between lemonade and gentle gossip. A handful of my friends are here, like Maya from my school, who brought a small rattle and a laugh that disarms any room. She squeezes my hand when no one watches. She knows I tried to keep this celebration simple, gracious mine. She also knows I lost arguments quietly for weeks. Claire manages the ribbon bouquet like a conductor, tying loops around a paper plate, announcing each gift with crisp cheer. "Another from Aunt Jo," she sings. "She's so generous." When one present for my mother appears, Claire remarks, "Vintage," in a tone that sounds like a diagnosis. My mother smiles anyway, eyes soft with endurance. She never fights in public. Between cards and cake slices, my phone buzzes. A text from Maya. "Check the family thread. Now." I slide my finger across the screen. It opens to a group chat titled Shower Helpers. Many names I recognize. Some I don't. The top message is from Claire, timestamp this morning. "Let's keep Greer from stressing," she wrote. "We'll guide the decisions." She tends to overdo, and it could harm the baby. Also, let's stick to our theme. Her taste is earnest. "Please no rainbow stuff. We only want classic." A cold ribbon winds around my ribs. I scroll further. Make sure her mother doesn't bring too many homemade items. We should curate. People will see photos. If she insists, we can put them behind the gift table. More messages ripple below, small approvals, agreeable hearts, jokes about art teachers, and messy colors. Someone wrote, "We'll fix the baby name if she picks something strange." Another replied with a laughing face. Then Claire again. "I have the final speech ready. I'll remind her to thank the right people." The lanterns sway. My lemonade tastes like water that forgot its lemon. I look up. Across the yard, Claire's smile glows, steady and varnished, as she slices the cake with surgical care. She raises her eyes, meets mine, and nods like a benediction. Something shifts, not a crack, but a hinge settling into place. I hold the phone under the hem of my dress and lock the screen. Around me, voices blur into one long, civilized hum. I trace the edge of my plate with a fingertip. I feel the first spark take air. The next hour moves like a glass boat across still water, pretty and precarious. I help pass napkins. I accept hugs from distant aunts. I say thank you in a voice that sounds trained. When people ask if I'm excited, I smile and nod, feeling the baby turn under my ribs like a comet searching for a sky. Claire keeps the program tidy. "Let's play a quick game," she says, pressing printed cards into hands. The game asks guests to guess the baby's arrival date, weight, and hair color. Greer wanted to skip it, she adds, light and conspiratorial. But traditions matter. Laughter bubbles at the edges. I color in the tiny boxes with a dull pencil, hearing the word skip like it belongs to a child. Owen moves through the clusters, setting down empty cups, collecting ribbons that escaped the bouquet. He is trying, I know. His family raised him on courtesy, like constant weather. Confrontation seems to him like thunder in a museum. We had argued twice, softly, about the shower. He said, let them help, it's their joy too. I said, I want room for my mother's hands. We slipped into our respective silences, hoping kindness would decide for us. It didn't. I keep the phone in my pocket, heat seeping through the case. Every time I hand a gift to Claire to announce, something in me tightens. When my mother's quilt appears, folded like a kept promise, Claire smiles and drapes it over a chair half hidden by a fern. My mother's mouth flickers. She glances at me, then away. The yard smells like cut grass and frosting. Maya finds me near the hydrangeas. You okay? She says under the music. Her eyes hold the same question she asked earlier, just nodded tighter. I'm fine, I answer, because that's how you stay afloat in a polite lake. It's almost done. She looks at my pocket. We both know that's not nothing. My fingers curl around the phone like a compass. Not nothing, I say. Then I feel the baby foot press against my palm, sudden and solemn, like a tiny oath. Gifts finish. Platters empty. Someone refills the lemonade with a little too much water. The sun leans lower, turning the roses into coins pressed to the fence. Claire stands, the paper plate bouquet shimmering at her wrist like a corsage. Before we close, she says, bright and clear, I'd like to say a few words. Maya touches my elbow once, then steps back. Owen's eyes find mine, a steady plea. My mother folds her hands in her lap, thumb tracing a seam in her dress. Claire lifts her chin. We are so grateful, she begins, to everyone who made this day meaningful and elegant. We wanted something classic, something to carry on family tradition. She smiles toward her sister, toward the church friends, toward the cake. We've guided details so our little one starts life surrounded by good taste and good values. Our little one. Good taste. The words click into a pattern I already know. I listen to the small, cultured sentences and remember the messages in my pocket, the careful requests, the edits, the behind-the-fern decisions. The glass boat rocks lightly. I feel the baby roll again, patient and decidable. The yard settles when she finishes. There's a scatter of polite claps. People begin to stand, gather bags, kiss cheeks. Claire turns toward me with a final smile, benevolent and claimed. I inhale. I anchor my feet to the grass, cool, and even under my sandals. I look at the faces that will soon cross back into their lives, carrying an impression of this day, a story they will retell at dinners and in churches. A story shaped by someone else's hand. I touch the phone and make a quiet promise no one hears. I will decide what my child inherits from this house. I will decide what my voice does in rooms like this. I will not trade my dignity to keep the water calm. After the last guests drift away, after the paper lanterns blink out one by one, I sit at our kitchen table with a phone and a glass of water. The faucet drips in the quiet like a metronome with tired hands. Owen takes the recycling to the curb, his silhouette moving in the window, shoulders round with the day. I open the thread. It stretches back weeks. Claire posted fabric palettes, a meticulous mood board labeled timeless. She wrote, keep her off Pinterest. She gets ideas. When my mother asked in a separate message if she could bring a framed photo of my grandmother to place by the cake, Claire replied, let's save that for family-only gatherings. This one is public-facing. She sent a list of approved vendors and suggested the florist remove the yellow ranunculus from my mother's bouquet because yellow reads juvenile. In another branch, a cousin joked, what if she names the baby something creative like Riverbrush? Claire wrote, we'll correct course. The baby carries our name, not her brand of whimsy. Our name, not mine. A new ping lands as I scroll. A message from an unknown number, then a second. I open the first. It's the florist, Ruth, a woman with warm wrists who tied my mother's bouquet this morning while asking about due dates and peaches. She writes, honey, I shouldn't share, but I saw messages from your mother-in-law about replacing some of your choices today. I tucked your mother's ribbon back in. You deserve color. If you need anything, I'm here. I feel my throat loosen at the edges, a small mercy blooming. I reply, thank you. You gave me back something I didn't know I'd already lost. Maya texts. Still up? I call. Her voice arrives like a hand on my shoulder. I didn't want to make things worse today, she says, but those messages weren't oversight. They were architecture. I know, I say, tracing a ring of condensation on the table. I keep thinking about the way she smiled while announcing decisions that didn't belong to her. People confuse elegance with control, Maya says. It's prettier from far away. We talk through the pattern of the past months. How Claire helped with our wedding invitations, then revised language until they read like a committee announcement. How she hosted Thanksgiving, then set place cards that put my mother at the far end. The way she praises me, a little too public, a little too shaped, always turning me into something that fits her narrative. What would feel like justice to you? Maya asks, without breaking what you still want to keep. I look toward the bedroom where the bassinet waits, white and quiet, like a held breath. Truth, spoken once, cleanly, I say. Not rage. Not a scene. Just a door closing softly, with me on the inside. Maya is silent a moment, then she says, then gather what you need. Proof, clarity, and ask. I open the thread again. A deeper scroll reveals a note labeled speech, hidden in the files. I open it. Claire has written remarks for my hospital stay. She plans to welcome staff, to manage visitors, to ensure baby's schedule aligns with healthy habits. She has a list of non-approved names, including the one Owen and I chose privately last week, kept in a small envelope on our fridge. The name belonged to my grandmother, the one who taught me to bind quilts in the blue hour of evening. Claire calls it sentimental. I forward the files to my email, to Maya's, to my own cloud. Then I print a few pages on our little home printer, the paper curling as it lands. I do not plan a performance. I plan a boundary. Owen returns. He drops his keys into the bowl, glances at the pages. Homework, he asks, tired smile softening the corners of his mouth. Just notes, I say. He pours himself water, swallows, and leans against the counter. Mom was happy with how it went, he says, a report disguised as observation. Were you? I ask. He hesitates, then says, it was organized. Organized is another word for hers. I nod. We need to talk, I tell him. Tomorrow morning, before your mother stops by for leftovers. He looks puzzled, then concerned. Everything okay? I place my hand over the baby, where a small heel pressed earlier, like a pledge. Not yet, I say. But I think it will be. Morning unrolls pale and tender. I make tea. Owen butters toast he forgets to eat. We sit across from each other at the table, the printed pages between us like a map of a country neither of us meant to visit. I read the shower thread. I begin. My voice is even, the way you speak when you want the words to survive the distance between mouths. I read the notes for the hospital, the visitor schedule, the list of names to avoid. Owen looks down, then up. Greer, he says, apology already in the shape of my name. I didn't know about the hospital plan. I saw some of the shower messages, but I thought she was just excited. She always overprepares. Excitement doesn't edit people out, I answer. I slide one page toward him, the line about my mother's quilt, behind the gift table, underlined. This is not help. This is control wrapped in a bow. He reads, jaw tight. She shouldn't have written this. She shouldn't have believed she could, I say, gentle but firm, because we didn't tell her otherwise. The doorbell rings. Claire's timing, precise as ever. Owen rubs a hand across his forehead. I'll handle it, he says, standing. Maybe we can. We can be calm, I say, placing a hand on his arm. We can be clear. Claire enters with a container of leftover cake and a potted rosemary plant shaped like a tree. Fresh start, she says cheerfully, placing the rosemary on the counter. It's good for memory. Good morning, I say. Let's sit. She senses something in the air and chooses a chair at a slant, posture crisp. Is everything all right? I have a few ideas for the hospital. Quiet hours. Proper lighting. I lay the printed pages on the table, not as accusation, but as statement. We saw the threads. I say. We saw your speech. The vendor list. The instructions. Her smile holds up another heartbeat, then slides away, revealing the structure beneath. I only wanted things to be appropriate, she says. You're under stress. People appreciate guidance. Guidance is not ownership, I reply. You spoke about our little one and our taste, as if my hands and my mother's hands were optional. You plan to manage my hospital room. You wrote to correct the baby's name if it didn't pass your test. Claire's cheeks brighten. She looks at Owen, seeking the old allegiance. I was protecting the family, she says. There are standards. Standards that keep my mother's quilt behind a fern, I say softly. Standards that change our last name on a cake. Standards that turn help into a stage. Silence holds the room. Owen sets his palms on the table. Mom, he says, voice steady in a way I haven't heard before. This isn't your decision. You hurt Greer. You disrespected her mom. You disrespected me by assuming I'd prefer your plan to our choices. Claire blinks. The room stays gentle, the kind of quiet that asks for truth. I thought, she says, the first dent in her certainty, I thought you wanted me involved. Involved, yes, I answer. In charge, no. I speak the rest like laying stones across a creek, one careful, measured step at a time. Here are our boundaries. You will not make decisions for our child's name, nursery, medical care, or schedule. You will not speak for me in hospitals, at home, or in public. If you want to bring something to an event, ask me, not a committee. If you cannot accept that, we will step back until you can. She inhales as if to argue, then exhales, deflated, calculating. You can't shut me out, she says, small hardness remaining. I have experience. Experience is welcome when it is offered, not imposed, I say. I lift my phone and, with a calmness I did not practice, open the group thread. I press the microphone icon and read, voice quiet, words clear, the lines about fixing our name, about proper detergent, about public-facing and approved vendors. I do not embellish. I do not accuse. I let her sentences sit on the table with the rosemary. When I finish, the room is very still. Even the refrigerator seems to bow. Claire looks at her hands. Something in her tightens, then loosens, the way a knot remembers its only rope. I went too far, she says. The admission is careful, incomplete. It is not a promise, but it is not a denial. Owen meets my eyes. We are both standing in a new room we built with words. Here's what we need now, I say. A message from you. To that group, today, correcting the story. Credit to my mother for her quilt. Credit to the friends who brought color. A note that you overstepped. And you will not run the hospital. Claire swallows. I can send something, she says, voice altered by the weight of the ask. Thank you, I answer simple. I stand, gather the pages, place them back in the drawer. Justice does not always roar. Sometimes it closes a file and waters a plant. We do not hug. We do not fight. We sit for a moment longer in the soft light, 3 people, newly rearranged by the truth. 2 weeks pass. The rosemary takes to its pot, green and willing. My mother stops by one afternoon with a basket of early peaches and a new quilt binding she wants to show me. We lay the quilt across the couch. The afternoon light sits in the stitches like small, patient stars. Claire's message went out the same day as our conversation. I read it once, then let it float away. It was formal, a little stiff, but it named what needed naming. She thanked my mother by name. She acknowledged she had taken liberties and would step back to support. Some replies sent hearts. Some sent surprised faces. I didn't look for apologies from the circle. I did not curate their reactions. Instead, I prepared a different room. We wrote our birth plan. We picked the music. We put the baby's name card into the hospital bag, safe and folded. We told the nurses ahead of time that only 2 visitors would be allowed, and that one was my mother. The other was Owen, who practiced saying no in the mirror, laughing at himself and learning the shape of new muscle. On a blue-tinged morning, with rain whispering against the windows, our daughter arrived. She was small and fierce and new, and yet she felt like a continuing. Owen cried without apology. I held her against my chest, counting her breaths as if they were beads on a line back to something holy. When my mother arrived, she touched the baby's hair like a prayer, then placed the quilt over our legs, the stitches winking under fluorescent lights, turning the room into a softer kind of bright. Claire sent a text asking for updates. We sent a photo. Later, when she stepped into the room, she paused at the door, shoulders squared, then softened them, as if remembering another posture she used to have. She sat when I invited her. She asked permission before lifting the baby. She called her by her name, the one from the envelope, the one that belonged to my grandmother. She said it quietly, as if trying on the taste of it, and finding it gentler than she expected. Beautiful, she said. Not classic. Not proper. Just beautiful. When we returned home, the yard smelled like warm rain and cut stems. Maya had left a small basket on the porch with tea and a note that read, "You did it quietly, and that's why it echoes." I placed the note in the kitchen drawer with the printed pages, then moved the pages to the back, replaced them with hospital bracelets and a photo of Owen's hand around our daughter's foot. Boundaries held. They had a way of making more air. The weeks that followed were ordinary in the way miracles are ordinary once they live in your house. Feedings, naps, the exact shape of sunrise in the nursery. Some days, I wore the same shirt until evening. Some nights, we watched the moon move like a slow coin across the window, a white promise I didn't need to own. Claire visited twice a week, no more. She brought groceries, texted first, left early. Sometimes she asked for instructions and wrote them down as if they were a recipe that mattered. Once, she stood in the doorway and said, "Your mother's quilt is a work of art." It felt like a small door opening in a wall she had long curated. I did not demand bigger words. I did not keep score. Quiet revenge is not a ledger. It is a garden you protect while you prune. One afternoon, I walked the stroller around the block, the rosemary catching sun on the porch as I passed. A neighbor waved. A breeze lifted the corner of the baby's blanket. I thought of the day in the backyard, of the cake with the wrong name, of the messages that showed me a map of control I could step away from. I thought of the moment when I read those words aloud, not to shame, but to stop the story that did not belong to me. My daughter curled a hand around my finger, grip fierce and certain. The roses along the fence held their petals without apology. I have learned this. Dignity changes the room, even when it frightens the loud furniture. A clear boundary is a gift you give to the child you were and the child you hold now. It is a promise that you will not let your life be narrated by someone else's careful voice. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.